So something that's come up the past couple of weeks probably. It comes up every now and again, but it seems to be one of those topics that have just been kind of, um, kind of been sort of glaring at the moment is the difficulty that a lot of people are having, this tends to cause a bit of a crisis of faith, really. But the difficulty that many people are having in relation to working with particular spirits, um, whose names are actually titles. I have a very, very close friend of mine is having this problem, but I've also seen it on forums and everything else lately on Reddit, etc., etc. It's being spoken about. So as I say, it's kind of like one of those topics that have been kind of thrown at me recently. So I thought I'd talk about it. So when we are working with, and I'm going to single out entities like Satan or Satan and Lucifer. I mean, these are titles. They are working titles. Satan means adversary. Lucifer means light bringer. And a lot of people will claim to work with Lucifer or work with Satan or Satan. And in some regards, in regards to Satan at least, this is often the Christian development or creation of that particular individual. Before that, Satan was really an adversary, and the term itself could be applied to many, many different spirits, including angels that were sent by God to kind of put, or the angels were kind of put in a person's path in order to challenge them, become the adversary in order to develop them, etc., etc. So, that word Satan can be used in many, many different ways for many, many different spirits, and not just what we may call the daimonic or the chthonic spirits. And then when it comes to Lucifer, the light bringer, the bringer of gnosis, the bringer of knowledge, the one that illuminates your path, etc., etc., etc. Now, I just want also mention when it comes to Lucifer, the light bringer is not to be confused with a sun deity. There are some sun deities that are also light bringers, but not all of them are. And some confusion comes in there. But anyway, we're not really talking about that today. We're talking about the difficulty some people are having with this idea of they are trying to work with a particular entity. They thought they were working with a particular entity, and then this realization came about that it's not actually an entity, it's the name that they are referring to as this entity is actually a title, almost like a job title. And then, as I said, crisis of faith comes in. The person's not really sure who they're working with, if any of it's real, because they've been calling this entity by this particular name that ends up not being a name, etc. It just continues and bit snowballs from there. Now, the way to approach this really is something similar to how we approach normal everyday life. If you have a plumbing problem or an electrical problem, you call a plumber or an electrician. You don't know them by name when you call them. You just call the plumber or the electrician. If you go to the doctor, you probably have known them for a while, therefore you know their name. But before you did, you're going to the doctor. And when you, phone work to say you're sick for the day, but you are going to the doctor, you don't say, you don't phone into work and say, I'm sick today, I'm not coming in, I'm going to see Dave. Because nobody knows who Dave is. You say, I'm going to see the doctor. Okay, so you are going to this person whose job title you are referring to. And then when you go to the doctor, it's Dr. Francis, Dr. Ashmole. I just recorded the Rosicrucian video, which you'll see on Monday. So I've got those names stuck in my head at the moment. Francis Bacon, Robert Flood, and Ellis Ashmole. So yeah, those names are going to come up. But anyway, so then you refer to them by name, okay? Because now you know their name. But before, as I said, coming back to like, electrician. You go through the phone book, you find an electrician, and it may have a company name associated with it, but it's the electrician. You phone the electrician, they come through. You may not even know their name. When you know they come and do the job, they leave. You probably don't even know what the name of the person was. He's just the electrician. And this is the same kind of thing. You work with this spirit, which is the light bringer, which is the Lucifer, or the adversary, the Satan. But you may not know their actual name. And you call them, same as you would get on the telephone and call the electrician. You reach out and you call to the Lucifer. That's really what it boils down to. Now, if you do want to get to know this individual entity, then you talk to it, you communicate with it, and you ask it what its name is. And this is a very old practice. I mean, this isn't something new, obviously, but it doesn't matter what. You work with any god or goddess, any kind of spirit, any deity, any divinity, and you are usually working with a title. So what happens is you then create this personal connection, you build a bond, you strengthen that relationship, and then you go to that entity and you ask it for a name. So often this is done quite early on because of discernment. You want to make sure that you are speaking to the correct spirit every time you go and talk to them. So quite early on, you discern that you are working with the spirit you want to actually interact with, and not some imposter or parasite or something like that. And then you ask for a name or ask for a symbol, maybe. They might give you a mantra or an N. They may give you a sigil or a seal or something like that to actually draw, or they may draw it in the air or something like that. Or they may give you a name which is personal. All of these things are very, very personal to you. They should not be passed on to anybody else. It's kind of like a testing point. There are obviously situations, like if you look in modern demonology, for example, where you have the ends which are shared. In the grimoires, we've got the seals or the sigils of the spirits which are shared publicly, obviously. Whether the original grimoires, whether the intention was to share them publicly, you're not really sure. I mean, if you look at the grimoires, they're really notes that magicians were taking at the time when they were experimenting and doing their testing and working the system, and then got publicly published at some point. But nowadays, we find that a lot of people do share sigils, share ends, chants, etc., publicly, and hopefully, this is because they've been given permission. But what you'll find is that when you personally approach a spirit that you personally work with, and as I say, this isn't just like your first time meeting, get a new name or something like that. Can happen that way, but not always. It's usually a spirit that you have or you're going to have a long-standing relationship with. You then go to the spirit, you ask for a name or something to identify them with. Then when you go back to them and you go speak to the spirit, you ask for the name or the sigil or the phrase that you were given to identify them, and then they will give it to you, and you're talking with the spirit in question. So that's really, when we are working with an individual spirit, it's not always a case of, you are working with a spirit that you're calling out by name and has a title. You do that initially, and then you can go to the spirit and ask for a personal identification, and that's different for everybody. That name, that sigil, that personal identification the spirit gives you is going to be personal to you and different for everybody else. But that's where you then have this separation of, working with a generalized spirit that everybody is working with, and it's just referred to as this title, like I work with Lucifer, or I work with Freya, which, I mean, you've got Freya, which means Lord and Lady in Nordic tradition. So, it's really, I mean, all of these titles all of the gods really are usually titles, as opposed to actual names that they present to everybody. And when you do go and get a personal name, or go and speak to the spirit and get a name, get their name. So you go to your Lucifer and you ask them what their name is. It's probably not going to be, you know, a name from one of the pantheons, or one of the popular gods or goddesses, or something like that. It's going to be a very, as I said, a very, very personal name that is shared only between you and that spirit. So, you know, that's really what it boils down to, though. Yeah. So I just wanted to mention that. If you've got any questions, just leave them in the comments, and I'll get into them, and possibly do another video which explains this further, if there's any queries or questions or comments or anything like that. All right. So thanks for watching. See you next time. Cheers for now. Bye.